Positive Gains is back, and our special guest today is Anthony Lionheart Smith. He is currently ranked number 6 in the UFC Light heavyweight division, and he has amassed 50 plus fights, soon to be come April 24th. Anthony, thanks for joining today.
Hey, no worries, man. I'm glad we can make it work.
Yeah, I appreciate you. So let's get started in your background. How did you get started into MMA and a little bit like how you grew up?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town. I don't know, about an hour and a half south of where I live now in Omaha.
Okay.
Just kind of. I think a lot of fighters have a similar story. Just I don't know. I was just a young, struggling kid. I didn't have a whole lot of direction. My father wasn't around. My grandpa was kind of my father figure. And I struggled. I was I'm a half black, kid growing up in a small Nebraska town. You can imagine what that looks like.
Yeah.
So I just struggled a little bit. Long story short, I suppose I was getting in a bunch of trouble, dropped out of high school. Kind of just I guess just like a ship floating at sea, and didn't really have anywhere to go. And I seen this flyer for, an amateur fight night. And I don't know, man, I just was like, I'll go check it out. So I went, and I was only going to watch. I ended up fighting that night.
Wow.
And kind of the rest is history, man. I liked it. It was a lot of fun. I didn't know it was ever going to be a career. I had no intention for it to be. I wasn't even sure you could make a living out of doing that at the time, but I just liked it, and it gave me a focus. It kind of got me out of my rut, and I just kind of threw everything into it just because it was something I could focus on. My mom was super supportive. She's a single mom and raising 2 kids, and for the first time in a long time, she'd seen me like really, really throwing myself into something, like really focused, like really, really driven to be good at this thing. And again, she didn't know I could make a living at it. It was just, I wasn't getting in fights. I wasn't out partying. I wasn't coming home at 4 a.m, drunk off my ass. I was just doing the right thing. I was living a normal life for the most part. And so she did everything she could to support me. She paid for gas and vehicle to get me to Omaha every day. And I drove one way an hour and a half every single day, just to train. Yeah, and eventually it was getting too much. I needed to be there more. She helped me get an apartment, and every Sunday she would come up and buy me groceries and make sure that I had enough money to not just eat, but for gas and anything I needed. Right. And she did that for a long time, and really put herself in a tough spot, just trying to help me, I guess, chase this dream that we didn't really know was a dream, I guess.
Wow, shout out to your mom for that, man. Being so supportive. Did you have any formal training like before you had seen that flyer? Were you involved in wrestling? Zero.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, I was a wrestler. I wrestled in high school. So I did have that. But honestly, wrestling with no real understanding of jiu-jitsu, it's almost worse to have wrestling than to not have it. So yeah, I mean, I'd never trained a day in my life. I'd never seen a live MMA fight. I had, I'd seen the UFC like on some like old VHSs that I convinced my grandpa to buy me, but like I had no idea what I was doing. I was so bad. My first fight, I got caught in an armbar, and I didn't even know how to tap. I didn't even know like what tapping was.
Yeah. So I was reading too that you did concrete finishing. So was that like the base for you until you kind of felt like, okay, fighting can be a career, and I'll sustain enough money and I can kind of fall back on the concrete finishing?
No, not initially. Not initially. I didn't really have anything at the beginning. I was doing like odd and end stuff, bouncing at bars and kind of stupid stuff like that. But the concrete thing started. I actually didn't start working concrete until after my first UFC fight in 2013.
Oh, okay.
I blew my knee and got cut from the UFC. So by that time, at the time I had a girlfriend who, all these years later is now my wife, but we had a small baby. So I had a blown knee, was cut from the UFC, and I just needed to make money. So that's kind of where I went. I started as a laborer, didn't know anything about concrete, just, had some work ethic and, and I could be there on time. I started at like $9 an hour and worked my way up until I was, running my own crews and was a full-time finisher.
Wow. Okay. I'm glad you cleared that up.
And I did that all the way until like my fourth fight when I made it back into the UFC. I didn't stop doing concrete until after I knocked out Elvis Mutapchik and hit my first bonus. So once I hit my first bonus, I was able to stop working.
So with 50 fights, man, I mean, how do you feel when when you walk into the cage? I mean, I'm sure you feel a sense of, I don't want to say, I guess, preparedness. I mean, I'm not going to say that there's nothing that you haven't seen, but, with 50 under your belt, you've got to feel pretty confident walking in there. So if you could just talk about the experience, leading up to whoever it is that you're fighting, how you feel knowing that you've got all those under your belt.
Yeah, the octagon is probably the place I feel the most comfortable in. I've been there more than I've been in any other place in the world. That's just I guess that's my happy place. At the very beginning of fighting, it was the only place that I felt like I belonged somewhere.
Wow.
And that's kind of the beauty in the sport. It's the beauty in jiu-jitsu and kind of kickboxing. Is like they accept anybody, and I think that was part of my problem in life is I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I didn't fit in anywhere. I've never fit the mold for anything else. So MMA and jiu-jitsu specifically, they kind of accept everybody.
Right.
That's kind of where it started, and then now it's hard to explain. Like, I know that's not the experience that a lot of fighters have. Most guys are nervous. Most guys are, even scared. Donald Cerrone talks about being scared a lot, and I'm just not. And I think maybe that's what makes me different than everybody else. Is I'm never in an uncomfortable position when I'm in the octagon. Some of that's my experience because I've pretty much been in any spot you could be in.
Right.
But the other part of it is that I think part of it's my upbringing and some of the places that I've been in life mentally that like there's no place that a fighter is going to take me as far as like, you hear fighters say all the time, like, I'm going to take that guy to the deep water.
Deepest waters. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I'm going to take that guy to a dark place. Like, you're never going to take me anywhere darker than I've already been in my own head in day-to-day life. And some of that's life experience. Some of that's my career. Some of that's self-inflicted. But that's kind of my experience, man. And I can see it in other people's eyes when I'm in there with them, like, he doesn't necessarily want to be here right now. Like, deep down he does, because this is what he's focused on and this is his career and this is what he's dedicated himself to. But like, in this very moment, he's not super comfortable, and I always am.
Right. So commentating, I've always wondered, you guys will work the desk and let's say it's a lightweight fight or a heavyweight. Is it easier to be more transparent in divisions in which you're not currently fighting? Because obviously when you get a 205er, is it harder to get your point across without people getting their feelings hurt? Because not all the time, like, if you guys are being honest, it doesn't mean that you're being disrespectful, but I'm sure that some people take it as a sign of disrespect. Oh, you want to fight me now? Whereas, no, man, maybe you just didn't have a great showing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, fighters are kind of sensitive anyways. So no matter what, any desk job, desk show that I do, someone's always going to get offended. What I've done a really good job of, I think, and I was actually talking to my producer for my Sirius XM show today about this exact same thing, because I'm actually bringing my opponent on my radio show this week.
Okay.
But what I've tried to do is I've tried to take all emotional responses out of my my analysis and my commentary. And I think it's made me a better fighter, actually, watching other weight classes that have nothing to do with me, that I'm not attached to at all, knowing that I'll potentially fight, and just really breaking down how that guy would fight that guy. Typically when you break fights down, it's for guys that you may fight yourself. So, if I break down a guy in my weight class, it's how would I fight that guy? It's way different when it's like, how would that guy fight that guy? It's way different. So, what I've really tried to do is take all emotional response out of it, take all of my technical and biases that I've just gotten over my career. Like, I fight different than you would fight, like our styles are different. So I'm going to look at a guy differently. I try to make everything factual. So it's not hard for me, because I just remove myself from it, and I just break down their skills. So you'll never find a fighter that will say, well, Anthony said this about me and that was wrong. Okay, I take that back. You will find guys, men and women, that will say that I was wrong. But if you actually go back and look at what I said, and then you watch their fights, it's very, very rare that I'm wrong. And I'm not saying that like in a, like an arrogant way. Like, I don't ever give people black and whites. It's, if you take the Stipe Francis Ngannou fight coming up, my analysis of that is not going to be, here's what's going to happen and here's who's going to win, because I don't actually know who's going to win. I can tell you though, if Stipe does this, and this, he has a high chance of being successful. If he doesn't do those things, here's what will likely happen. And then I'll give you the flip side of that on Francis Ngannou. If he does this, and this, he'll be successful. If he doesn't do those things, here's what will likely happen. And so I usually give people like 4 scenarios. And out of those 4 scenarios, I'm almost never wrong. Almost always one of those things happen. And that's how I approach it. I take myself out of it, and I just try to I look at their fights, and here's how he throws punches, here's how he wrestles, here's how he grapples, and here's how that matches up against his opponent. If those things don't happen, here's what could happen. And I'm very different than, like a Dan Hardy. Dan Hardy will give you his analysis of the fighters, but he'll never tell you what he thinks could happen or what could potentially happen. He'll just tell you where their strengths and weaknesses are. So it's cool, like, kind of seeing how guys look at it differently. DC, I love DC to death, but DC is a very hard nosed, here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you kind of set yourself up for failure when you do that.
Yeah, you find yourself on the couple memes sometimes. But yeah, I get a kick out of watching them.
Yep.
Because you like I said, you don't lie, man, and there's no backtracking. I've seen a lot of them, and like you said, the things that you say could happen in a pool, one of those things ends up happening. But yeah, I wish people would take their feelings out of it sometimes.
Man, I can't tell you how many times I've had where I've been working the desk, and then I'll go back to the hotel, and there'll be like I tell this story all the time. Cynthia Calvillo cornered me in a hotel lobby one time, and she was mad, man. She was like, you said this, and this, and this, and this. And I tried to be so cool. And I was like, listen, I said all those things, and that's exactly how the fight went. Like, I wasn't wrong. Like, I'm not bashing you. I'm not saying, like, you didn't even lose. Like I just said, like, if you end up on the ground with that girl, she's going to out-grapple you. Like, that's what I said. And the entire fight, she got out-grappled. And then it turned out the fight, there was like a point deduction or a 10-8 round or something, and the fight ended up a draw. So she didn't even lose, but she got, anytime they hit the ground, she got totally out-grappled. And it's like, I'm not trying to bash you guys. Like, I love you guys. Like, I'm trying to build you guys up. I'm still with you in the locker rooms. Like, I'm still a competitor. But at the end of the day, I'm getting paid to give my analysis on a fight. Like, I'm not getting paid to make you feel good about yourself. Like, I'm going to be honest. Here's the facts. John Jones has had problems with some of the things that I've said. Like, you've never heard me talk about John Jones's personal life. You've never heard me talk about anything that's like private or not in the public eye already.
Right.
I don't care what he does. I don't care how faithful he is to his wife. I don't care how many drugs he does. I don't care about any of that stuff. I care about the facts and his style, and that's offensive to him. But at the end of the day, like what I've said is very true, and I do it in a way that I try not to offend people. Like I do try to not be an asshole, but I'm very honest about people's skill sets.
Sometimes I feel like with you and there's a few other fighters that you're almost titled, in my opinion, like the forgotten fighters, because like the last fight when you fought Devin Clark, people ride and no disrespect to him, people ride the train, and sometimes they get so overwhelmed that they forget, what maybe you've accomplished or other people, and they talk themselves into buying it, which I understand. On the other side, you've got to believe that you can win a fight. But I honestly was not shocked, that you would put him in that triangle choke, because, again, the game plan, like you said, I don't remember. I think it was after you said something. I wish I could remember what exactly you said. You weren't waiting. You said you talked about the preparation for it, that you knew that moment was going to come, and it manifested in that way. I thought that was pretty interesting, the way you said it. But yeah, there's a few fighters that come off a couple losses and then magically people just write them off. And I feel like they do that with you sometimes. You feel like that?
They do. Yeah, they do. And I try not to let it bother me too much, but I see it. It's no one's blown me out of the water, So like this Jimmy Crute fight was announced, and they're like, "Oh, Anthony's done. This is his retirement fight. It's Jimmy Crute's gonna get him out of there in one round." It's like, oh my god, like one round. You guys are giving me.
Yeah.
You don't think I'm gonna make it one round? Like who's done that?
Yeah.
So. But you're right. People do forget, and that's kind of that's kind of how our sport is. It's because there's so many fights that they forget about what you've done, and it's about what have you done for me lately. And it's like sometimes it's like the Devin Clark fight never happened. It's like going into that fight, he's younger, faster, stronger. He's the old dog, and then I go in there and then I beat him, and they're like, "Well, he sucked anyways." So it's like,
yeah.
You gotta just, I guess you just gotta roll with it, man. That's how they've been my whole career. It's no different in the Jimmy Crute fight. He's younger, stronger, faster. He's the next up and comer. It's like, man, I've said the same thing about Jimmy Crute. I think he's great. I think he's phenomenal, but I think he's young enough and confident enough to get himself into trouble, and I don't think he's technical enough to get himself out of it. But there's a lot of guys like me out there, that people write off. They've been writing Cowboy off for a long time, and then he shows up and he has a great performance. I'd like to hope that I'm going to be more consistent than Cowboy is, but it's kind of, I'm just used to it at this point.
So when you get away from fighting, obviously you're a family man. What are you doing in your free time? Because I guess camps run like 8 weeks, 12 weeks. I mean, I guess everybody's different. So when you finally get away from fighting, how do you finally breathe and take the next step?
Yeah, I do. I spend a lot of time with my family. We're like your typical Midwest family, like during hunting season, I'm hunting. During the summer months when it's nice, I got an RV, and we have all of us have razors, so we got a big trailer, and we just spend the summer pulling the razors all around the country and hitting the trails and the mountains. And my kids really, really enjoy being out on the trails and riding, and they like being outside. We camp a lot. So we pretty much spend all the summer pretty much traveling all over the place. Just, we got a big group of people that we ride with. So there might be 10 families. We'll just meet in South Dakota or Colorado or West Virginia or Oklahoma or whatever. And we'll just pick a date and we'll meet up there and go ride and spend a week out there. And that's kind of how we spend our summers. A lot of time in the neighborhood. We have a really cool neighborhood here. Most of the kids are all about the same age. I have a 3-year-old. There's a handful of 3-year-olds within a couple houses here. I got a 9-year-old. There's a lot of kids that are in her same grade. I got a 6-year-old. Again, a lot of kids that are her same age. So Um, so, I mean, there's probably 20 kids on any day that are just, a lot of parents, there'd be 10 of us, 10 parents sitting in a driveway and lawn chairs, or, there's a circle right across the street, and kids are riding bikes and skateboards, and parents are having cold beers and trying to stay cool in the summer. It's a slow motion lifestyle for sure, but it's what I like.
That's great. I mean, slow motion is good. I mean, it gives you a way to break off of that fast pace, go, 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 go. Another question I had too was, with the pandemic, a lot of people have told me that they like fighting without fans, that they are able to focus more on their cornermen, their coaches and things like that, that they don't feel the pressure to have to, quote unquote, put on a show in front of all these people. Is that something that you tap into as well, or do you kind of lean the other way?
It was tough for me at first, to be honest with you. I really feed off of the fans. I love there's no better live sporting event than a UFC fight. It's just a different animal, man. It's a different beast. And I really thrive in that environment, whether they're booing or cheering. I don't really care. I just want them to be loud. So it took me a while to get used to it. I would much rather go back to having fans. I feel like I think at the beginning, it was almost like it felt like a sparring session, like in the gym. Like it didn't feel like a fight.
Yeah.
And that was like, I don't know, like the fans kind of, because I'm never really nervous when I go in there, the fans always like pumped me up. It gave me like an emotion.
Okay.
Like when I fought Glover and when I fought Rakic, I felt very dead inside. As weird as that feels, as weird as that sounds, like I wasn't nervous, but I also wasn't super pumped up or ready to roll. Like, I remember the referee with Rakic was like, "Are you ready?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." Like I was kind of indifferent, like, and I look across at him and he's like super pumped and he's just soaking wet with sweat and he's like, you can tell he's nervous. And I was like, I don't really feel any of that. But I feel like with the fans, I always did, like if you ever watch when I'm in there, I always like pace the fence and I like look outside the fence. That's something I've always done because I'm looking into the crowd. Like I'm looking at faces and like people are pumped up and people like their adrenaline super high. And I feed off of that. And now I walk around the Apex and like look at the doctor and shit. So it's like, it's taken me, it's taken me a minute to get used to it. Like before, my coaches were always trying to calm me down in the back because I was super jacked and ready to roll. So they're like, hey, calm down. Like you still got a little bit. And now like with the Devin fight, like they were just amping me up, like blaring the music, and we had Tupac and Biggie going wild and we were dancing and like trying to get the energy super high. So when I got out there, I think we just timed it right. Like my energy was hella high. So I was able to just get going right away. So it's definitely taken adjustment.
Yeah, it's always a question. Like I said, I like asking because some people are, lean one way or the other. And then two, the media obligations. How hard is it on a normal fight pre-pandemic? How hard is it when, you sign on, you do your camp, and then you fly out that week and you've got media, you're signing all these autographs. I mean, how hard is it to stay focused the entire time? Because it seems like by fight time, it's go time, but you could be kind of drained from all the extracurricular stuff, that you have to deal with.
Yeah, I could see how a lot of people could be like that. Like when I was fighting at 185, the media obligations were awful because I was cutting so much weight and I was miserable and I was hungry and dehydrated and I was just in a terrible place. Since I've been at 205, I actually don't mind it. It gets me out of my hotel room. It gets me something to go do. Because I'm usually pretty bored because I'm not like cutting weight and that's all I'm thinking about is the fight. So when I was cutting real hard, the fight we just drug on and I was like, God damn, is it really only Tuesday? It took forever.
Yeah.
But now the fight weeks fly by. It gives me, I don't mind it at all. And now I'm kind of in the media world. So I understand that those guys have a hard job. And when guys are cutting a lot of weight, we don't typically give you a whole bunch of content, like kind of in shitty moods. We don't feel that great. We don't want to be there anyways.
Yeah.
So they don't really get a whole lot out of the fighters. So I know that now the media looks forward to me, to when it's my turn to come, because they're going to at least have a genuine conversation with someone who's not in a terrible mood. Understandably, those guys are in terrible moods. Like I'm not knocking that all. I've been there. I've been one of those guys, but so I try to make it as fun and enjoyable for them, because they've spent all day talking to guys that don't want to talk to them.
And what advice would you have for, somebody willing to sacrifice and want to get into MMA? Because the thing again about your story is it was very humble beginnings, and it wasn't all, glorified. Not everyone's going to be, blessed like like a Jordan Burroughs, who, again, Olympic champion, but would have the opportunity to just fight right away. You had to work from the ground up. So advice for people like that, come from a small town and humble beginnings like yourself.
My advice would be, one, like, you got to realize that some of us have to work really, really hard. John he's just gifted. He's just God-given lots of gifts, and I'm not going to pretend like he hasn't worked hard for it, because I'm sure that he has, but he kind of started on third base. So you gotta work hard, and that's kind of a given in anything you want to do, but you got to expect pain. There's a lot of pain that goes in this sport, and you can't get down and get out on yourself. You got to have a short memory for sure. And to be honest, one of the weird ones, you got to work. You got to have a job. Like, one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was when I was younger. I tried to support myself on fighting alone. And what it does is it takes your ability to fight free away from you, because you're so worried about a paycheck. You're so worried about, you have to win because you need your second check. It's the way the pay structure works in this sport. So, when I was working as a concrete finisher, I didn't really need to fight. Like, I didn't need the money. By that time I was making pretty good money working. So it was a big pain in the ass, because I was training before work at 5 a.m, working all day, and then training at night. But when it did come time to fight, I didn't have any reservations about money. I was doing it because I loved it, not because I needed to pay the bills or feed my family. So, one of my coaches here, like his he has a rule for all the fighters. Like, if your name isn't Anthony Smith, you need to be in school full time, or you need to be working full time, or you can't train here. Because he's seen it happen to me. It skews your view of the fight, and you don't take chances, and you're so super reserved. And so that's one of the ones that I like to tell young guys, like, you got to work. It's possible. I did it all the way until like my 4th or 5th fight in the UFC. You can do it. So that's a big one that probably a lot of people wouldn't think about, but that changed a lot for me. And then the short memory one is huge, man. Like, you can't let people, you can't get too up or too down. You can't let people on the internet dictate how you feel about yourself. When I beat Gus, I was the best in the world, and I was supposed to be next in line for John Jones to get a rematch. And then you lose, and you should retire, and you're done. And you got to stay super even keeled, and just, like, if you don't have my phone number, like, I don't care what your opinion is, and that's kind of how I look at it. Like, if I don't care when you're sad, then I don't care what your opinion is. And that's kind of how I look at it. So, and kind of, you can make a game at it. If you're one of those people that get super into the comments and that just tears you up, like, you just can't read them. But like, now I'm at a point where, if me and my wife get bored, sometimes we'll go on Reddit and just see what they're saying about me, and we'll just make jokes about it, and we'll screenshot them and send them to our neighbors and stuff, just to keep it fun and playful. So, when I stopped caring what people thought about me and stopped putting weight into people's opinions of my fight game and my style, then I grew a lot then.
Those same people too, I think the term is like checking receipts, so when you're walking around, a lot of those people that are the keyboard warriors are probably the first ones up there. Hey, let me get a picture, autograph. I always find that funny too. But I think we've covered everything, man.
100%. 100%.
But I wanted to say again, thank you for coming on and taking time out of your busy day. I really appreciate it, especially that you've got your fight coming up. We're pulling for you. My family and I, we're hoping that your hand is raised victorious, and you're welcome back on anytime, man.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you. Yeah, keep knocking, man. You're pretty good at this podcast thing, so keep kicking ass.
Thank you. I appreciate it.